The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this, what is it? Oh, it's Tuesday, June 25th. We're getting close to 4th of July. I hope everybody's having a fantastic week so far, and welcome to Yaron Brook Show. Jump right in to the news. The topic we'll be covering after the news is newsy, but we'll cover it more in depth, and that is the Julian Assange release and plea deal with the U.S. government and release from prison in the U.K., return to Australia. We'll cover him, and we'll compare him with Snowden, and try to see what the principle is in terms of judging them. Is Assange, like many claim out there, a hero? Is he deserving of this plea deal? Is Snowden different? Is he better? Is he worse? Is he a hero? Should he get pardoned? So we'll cover that. We'll talk about Assange, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his name, but we'll talk about both of them afterwards. And I'm sure there's going to be disagreement on the chat, so that'll make it interesting, right? I'm sure there'll be people who disagree. I think there's disagreement within the objectives community about this. So I will tell you what I think. I'll make a case for it. Maybe I'll convince you. Maybe I won't. We will see. All right. Let's start off with covering some items on the news. We'll start off with Israel. You know, it's just like every day now, there seems to be this drumbeat of war with Lebanon, war with Lebanon, war with Lebanon. It really does seem like it's building. I've seen some photos of tanks moving to the north. I don't know if those are real or not. There's continued discussion of major operations in Gaza ending soon and moving some of those troops to the north. It's going to be interesting how this evolves. I don't think anything's imminent because things are not wrapped up in Gaza yet. But Israel has major challenges. What was news, I think this morning, is the United States came out and said that, just to make it clear to Hezbollah, I guess this is their new strategy, that they would support an Israeli operation in Lebanon, that they will not try to stop Israel, that if Hezbollah continues on its path, there will be war, and that the United States is committing to providing weapons and supplies and maybe even providing some defensive military operations on behalf of Israel. So wouldn't be surprised if we see one of those aircraft carriers that are out there in the Mediterranean and Red Sea actually get involved in shooting down Hezbollah missiles over Israel, or maybe they'll hold back. You know, that'll be there, but they'll also use U.S. aircraft to shoot down Iranian missiles if Iran gets involved. So the U.S. expressing strong support for Israel vis-a-vis Hezbollah. I think that is primarily done in order to put pressure on Lebanon. Maybe they realize, I don't know, maybe somebody in this administration realizes that every time they criticize Israel, every time they say they pull weapons away, every time they put pressure on Israel to compromise and to sell out and so forth, it emboldens the enemy. And maybe they've decided that, okay, for this, they will, for this thing with Lebanon, they'll shift strategy, and maybe when they, voice support for Israel, maybe that will restrain the Hezbollah and its Iranian masters. We will see. In the meantime, Hezbollah's bombing in the north of Israel have caused massive fires all over the Galilee, Israel just can't. You can't live like this. It's evacuated a significant percentage of the population who lives along the border with Lebanon in the north. Further south, they're combating fires constantly. Everybody is constantly in a state of suspense. When are the missiles going to fly? Where they're going to fly? Are they going to be knocked down? Not knocked down? There's real constant, prevalent angst, and the question is going to be, to what extent, when is Israel going to go in, and how is it going to go in, and will it do the full job, which means attacking Beirut? What is Israel's strategy here, and what will America support? What will the Americans support? And then, of course, what will the Lebanese? We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but what will the Lebanese do? That is, what will the Christians and the Sunnis? Hezbollah is Shiite. Some Sunnis are supporters of Hamas, so they're allies of Hezbollah, but other Sunnis just want to be left alone. They just want to live. And then there's a large Druze population. Druze is a secret religion spin-off from Islam that has significant populations in Lebanon, Israel, and Syria. Druze in Israel actually serve in the Israeli army, and they are very supportive of the state of Israel. Will the Druze in Lebanon, do they want to get into a fight with Hezbollah? I mean, Hezbollah is very powerful, but they might use the opportunity where Israel is attacking them to clean house. Who knows? In the meantime, I saw a map of kind of the range of Hezbollah's missiles. I mean, Hezbollah does have missiles, not clear how many of them, that reach basically almost all of Israel. Maybe the very southern tip of Israel is not within their reach, but importantly, Tel Aviv is in their reach, Gaza is in their reach, Jerusalem is in their reach, but primarily I'd say most of the missiles are missiles that can reach into the Galilee, into Haifa, and into much of northern Israel. So anyway, Hezbollah, I think, is much better trained, more experienced than Hamas, less motivated maybe than Hamas, but still religious nuts who believe they're going to get 72 virgins. So I guess that's a motivation. Israel also has a lot of infrastructure, like electricity that power stations could be damaged by Hezbollah. So what I have heard is Israel's accumulated massive emergency supplies of fuel, of food, and of medical gear. It has also bolstered its electric grid, fortified it, and I think established air defense systems around it so as not to take damage there. While daily blackouts are probably expected in a war, they are going to try to maintain the infrastructure to the extent that they can. I think they can. Also, they would halt the gas rig operations out in the Mediterranean, again, potentially within range of some Hezbollah missiles, and of course that is probably not protected. These are not missiles necessarily that the Air Force can shoot down from planes, maybe, and maybe that's what protect the gas rigs. But Israel's tiny. Israel's tiny. Whereas, when Iran launched missiles and drones, they had to cross Iraq and they had to cross Jordan, so there was plenty of time. Here, there's going to be very little time. We're talking about seconds with regard to northern Israel, and maybe up to 2 minutes if we're talking about southern Israel. But Tel Aviv is within a minute and a half of most of the missiles that the Hezbollah has. So there's not a lot of time to scramble airplanes. They'll have to have airplanes in the air constantly. Now, of course, it is possible, and this is, I think, the hope of the Israelis and what I'm sure military intelligence is working on, and Air Force intelligence are working on day and night. It's to identify the missiles where they're stored, to identify launch sites well in advance, and to basically destroy as much as possible on the ground before anything's launched. And, to the extent that Israel believes that some of this is stored in places like Beirut, with large civilian populations, with potential of civilian casualties, they won't attack those until it's all-out war and they can justify it. So those are not being attacked right now. I also think that Hezbollah has put a lot of these missiles in very, very deep bunkers and maybe in some of the mountains in Lebanon. Lebanon is quite a mountainous area. It was called Switzerland of the Middle East. It's a beautiful country. Beirut, of course, was called before the Civil War started in the 70s. The Paris of the Middle East. It was a beautiful, beautiful city with a robust nightlife. It was quite a secular place. No more. No secularity and no nightlife. Well, I'm sure there is nightlife, but anyway, so Israel, Beirut is anyway. They planted these things deep in the mountains. We might be discovering that Israel has weapons that we didn't know they had, like maybe bunker-busting bombs that supposedly only the U.S. has. Maybe Israel has produced some of their own. Maybe they have other technologies that make it possible for them to destroy these missiles on the ground. Maybe they have what are called EMP, electromagnetic bombs that disrupt the electronics within these weapons that Israel has never used before. Partially, well, I don't know why they haven't used them before, but they haven't acknowledged they have such weapons. But it could be interesting if they use those weapons. Anyway, there's a lot of talk right now about Israel's capabilities. There's a lot of talk right now about U.S. support, all in an attempt to basically scare the Hezbollah from prodding Israel into actually launching one of these attacks, continuing the attacks, and thus prodding Israel into a war. All right, so I'll keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on the continued operations in the Gaza Strip. I'll keep filling you in. Once a war actually occurs, we'll get some maps out, and I'll show you what is going on in a detailed way. As I've told you before, as compared to Gaza, this is an area that at least I used to know quite well. My wife knew it better than I did, but we were both, as part of military intelligence, Lebanon was her responsibility, my wife's responsibility. I was assigned to Lebanon during crises and war, which turned out to be quite often. So, and I've been to Lebanon, and I've traveled through Lebanon, and I've been to Beirut, so we can actually look at where troops are and what's going on, and what is happening, and what Israel needs to do to win this, so we can get into the nuts and bolts of any attack. Hopefully, there's no war with Lebanon. Hopefully, Hezbollah kind of cuts a deal, retreats past to the north, past the Litani River. I'll show you where the Litani River when we get maps out, and stops, right, because it doesn't want to be crushed. But I don't know how to put the odds on that. I think the odds of that happening are less than 30%. I think the primary the odds of war are higher than that. So we will see, and and then how long will the war last, and where will Israel stop, and how far will it go in, and how much of it's from the air and how much is from the ground. All of that is to be determined. We will see. All right. So one more piece of news from Israel, which is interesting, and that is the Supreme Court of Israel ruled this morning that the Israeli military must start drafting young ultra-Orthodox Jews into the military. In other words, the exemption that the ultra-Orthodox Jews in Israel have received from military service to date. That exemption has ended. It is no longer in existence. The law that made it possible expired, and no law in its place has been put in place. The Supreme Court, has been dealing with this case for months now. It's finally come across and made a definitive argument. Now, look, I am not for a draft. I'm against a draft. But the idea of excluding some people based on their religion is ridiculous. It is absurd. The argument is that these religious Jews pray for Israel, and their prayer are more important than being a soldier on the front. particularly right now with a war raging in Gaza and the potential war in Lebanon and a potentially bigger war with Iran. It is absurd and insulting and ridiculous and an insult to the fighting troops that some people get an exemption from 3 years of service because of their religiosity, because prayer is better than fighting, really. So the Supreme Court unanimously, surprisingly, so this includes the more conservative elements within the court, has basically ruled that they must start drafting them, starting with 3,000 students, but ultimately there's something like 50,000 of them. The 3,000 are young, and then in addition to that, the Supreme Court ruled that the payments made to the yeshivas, which are the schools of the ultra-Orthodox, where they're supposed to go learn and pray for the state of Israel instead of serving in the military, that funding for those schools be suspended by the Israeli government because the funding was associated with. So not only did these parasites not want to go to the military, I get that they don't want to, but they also demand that their education, their facilities are heavily subsidized by the government. So they want to be paid not to serve in the Israeli army. And that is just a travesty. It's a travesty. You have to have equality before the law. It cannot be the case that you get exemptions based on religion. So we will see, of course, this could mean the fall of the Netanyahu government. The Netanyahu government has two ultra-Orthodox religious parties as part of the coalition. These parties are demanding a new law that would exempt the ultra-Orthodox. Netanyahu cannot deliver because there are people within his own party, members of the Knesset in his own party, the Likud, who refuse to vote for religious exemptions, particularly at a time of war. This could bring down the government and would force Netanyahu to call for elections, which is tricky given the situation in Lebanon. But he could call for the elections in the fall, anticipating victory in Lebanon in the short run. Anyway, a lot is up in the air. A lot is uncertain with regard to how this all plays out, particularly its political ramifications. Polls show that a new political party on the right, which comprises of kind of Lieberman, who heads a political party of the right that is associated with Russian immigrants, that is very opposed to religion, insisting on separation of state and religion, and will not form a coalition with the ultra-Orthodox and religious parties. A coalition with him, with Naftali Bennett, the previous prime minister of Israel, he's fairly secular, right-wing, I think pretty good, and some other former allies of Netanyahu that have over the years left his party, and together with a former head of the Shin Bet is the internal security forces in Israel, that they would form a new party, and if they did, they would be the largest party in Israel, and you could form a right-wing, a right of center, not a right-wing, but a right of center coalition that would basically keep the religionists out and have a real shot. It would mean Netanyahu would probably not, in such a coalition, probably not be prime minister. It would probably be Bennett. It is, after all, it's going to be quite interesting to see how all this evolves within Israeli politics. All right, let's move to the United States. Yesterday, the Biden administration got a real, what do you call it? It had a really bad day. So one of Biden's, premier initiatives, and it has been for a while, premier initiatives have been the student loan forgiveness. Biden has focused on that. He tried, if you remember, a big, $430 billion student loan forgiveness deal. The Biden administration was sued by a number of states. The court case is known as Biden versus Nebraska. And in the lawsuit claimed that Congress never authorized the president to unilaterally do loan forgiveness on that scale, and that it was therefore excess excess of executive powers, and that he should be stopped. And that went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled with Nebraska and against the Biden administration, and basically ruled that the loan forgiveness plan was I guess unconstitutional, and rejected it. Anyway, Biden is committed to this. It's just one way to try to buy, if you will, young voters, and to tell them, look what I've done to you. Yes, I might support Israel somewhat, but look, I've forgiven you all your student loans. Isn't that cool? That kind of blew up in his face. But he didn't give up. This is a real major issue for him, a really major plank in his agenda. And therefore, he tried again. And he's put together several programs now, several different attempts at programs that would reinstate loan forgiveness. This latest one, known as the SAVE plan, would have discharged $156 billion. He hoped that this one is based on a different law. I think this one is based on a 1965 law, the Higher Education Act of 1965. The previous case, the previous executive order was based on a 2003 HEROES Act. So he's claiming that the 1965 Higher Education Act gives him the power to do this, and it's a more limited scope. Instead of 430 billion, it's 156 billion. Anyway, that was there are two lawsuits in two federal courts over this by different states. And yesterday, basically, both federal courts ruled against the Biden administration. That is, both federal district courts ruled that Biden exceeded his authority as president in passing this. Now, this is great for people like me who want the courts to rein in executive power. This is fantastic. Put aside the actual topic here, the very idea that executive orders are going to be limited constraints is good, particularly, and it's good no matter who wins the next election. Trump intends to use lots of executive orders. Biden will continue. And it's good to see the courts reining that in. In this particular case, both in Missouri versus Biden and in, what was the other one? Alaska, I think, versus Biden. In both cases, the judges, and this might surprise you because of the tribalism in this country. In both cases, the judges were appointed by Obama. So in both cases, these are Obama appointees. And in both cases, they ruled that Biden exceeded his authority. They basically say that the law, the Education Act of 1965, does not give him the power to do this, and that this is way too big of a program, $150 billion, for him to do unilaterally without the authorization by Congress. That is, nobody's saying that the government cannot do this, that the government cannot forgive loans. But it is saying, and this is the Constitution, and this is the beauty of our system in America, it's basically saying the Constitution basically assigns this responsibility to Congress, not to the executive. You're exceeding your powers as an executive by forgiving these loans, and therefore they are, throwing them out. They're throwing out the executive order. Now, this can be appealed, and it can go to an appellate court, and then it could go to the Supreme Court. But it really does seem like if it can't win at the federal district judge level, it can't win with Obama-appointed judges, then it's not going to win. And this is good news for the budget. It's good news for justice. just the idea that some people get their loans forgiven and others don't, particularly when you think about who these people are. They're mostly, this is not exactly a program to help poor people. But in any case, why are some people treated differently than other people under the law? That's not what these judges are ruling on. It's not an equality before the law issue, but that's the consequence. The consequence is that this unjust program of forgiving some people's loans and not other people, or forgiving anybody's loans after they took them, and massively increasing the U.S. Deficit and debt. This is good news. So good stuff is happening once in a while. Our courts step in and do something positive. Again, the most important thing here, from my perspective, is the reining in of executive orders, the placing of limitations on the actions of the president and limiting his executive power. That is good news. Again, particularly given that we're going to a period of potentially a Trump presidency where he will be using a lot of executive orders. He has already committed to doing that. All right, let's see. As Carl says, a win for separation of powers. Jefferson would be so proud. Absolutely. Well, Jefferson was less involved. It was not really involved in the drafting of the Constitution. The Constitution is really a document that Madison was crucial in putting together and implementing. So Madison, Washington, Franklin, and the other founders who participated in the Constitutional Convention would be enormously proud of this. All right, let's see. All right, Ayaan Hirsi Ali has an interesting article that she wrote. I guess it's on her Substack. Maybe it's not. She's got something called restorationbulletin.com, which is her website. And, and she is writing, she's writing about the European election, the shift to the right that happened in Europe. And one of the things that she identifies, we'll get to some things I really disagree with her on, but one of the things she identifies is that the shift to the right, these far-right political parties in Europe, surprisingly, has brought on board, was primarily among young people, and with exception of France, primarily among young men. That is, the shift to the right, again, particularly to far right, is most dramatically seen. Most dramatically seen. I think that's the best way to put it. Among young men. These are young people that in 2019, the last time there was a European election, voted heavily for the Green Party. The Green Party is historically, and the left generally, and the far left, have generally been political parties that have gotten a huge amount of support from the youth. Right, and this is a real shift. This election, a real shift where the youth flipped from the radical left to the radical right, or the far left to the far right. They also shifted from the ones in the middle shifted from center left to center right. So generally, young people in many countries, France, Germany, elsewhere, are generally pro the right. Although it is interesting that, of course, the far left parties, particularly if those far left parties picked up on anti-immigration sentiment, also did very well with young people. That's true in Germany, certainly true in Germany. It is also interesting, just I'll note, that this is also happening in the United States. That is, if you look at demographics right now and you look at polls, Donald Trump is doing much better than he has in the past, much better than he has in the past, with young voters, with 18 to 24-year-olds. There's a clear shift to the kind of populist right in America. There's a clear shift to the populist right in Europe among the youth. And, you know, I know Lee attributes this to a number of reasons. One, she says, the far right appeals to the rebelliousness of the youth, especially young men, right? They want to be rebels. They want to be different. They want to challenge the status quo. They certainly want to challenge the elites. You know, the right provides them with a seductive mix, if you will, of immigration restrictionism, anti-wokeness, and some good aesthetics. Now, I don't know about the good aesthetics if they're real, but this is a phenomenon. This idea of good aesthetics is something that the alt-right, going back to 2015-16, particularly 2016, really pushed in the United States and internationally. You know, they're very good with memes. They create really strong graphic representations. They represent themselves pretty well in the media and in other places. They dress well. They don't look crazy or nutty, even if their ideas are. Yes, they love, as Andrew says, Roman architecture or cathedrals, or they love old stuff. They emphasize, I guess, in the alt-right in the United States, they emphasize among men, bodybuilding and looking good and stuff like that. So there is an aesthetic. If you think about that, if you think about that, the Nazis were very big on aesthetics. Now, I think their aesthetics are ugly and disgusting, and I think the alt-right's aesthetics are ugly and disgusting. But it was important to them. It was important to them, in a sense that, Hitler had an architect. He was designing, in the process of rebuilding Berlin and designing it as an imperial city with Roman columns, more Roman than Greek. I think the admiration was particularly for the Romans and their empire. There was a huge explosion in art, if you can call it art, kind of social realism, both among the communists and among the fascists. I could do a show on this one day. I've got a bunch of books here about this, but a huge kind of as a counter to the meaningless, abstract garbage of modern art that was associated with the left. The right presented an alternative aesthetic, which was, realistic or social realism, and was what do you call it? Representational. And it just shows that sometimes, just because the left, advocated for such horrible non-art, it doesn't make the art that the right produces any better. It's a false alternative to think that the two alternatives are either accept Kandinsky and the modern, so-called modern art movement, or you have to accept, fascist art and communist art. The real alternative, of course, is romantic art. It's art from the 19th century, or non-politicized art. Art should not be political. Its themes are not primarily political. Anyway, the point is that there is this authoritarians, the Catholic Church understood this, authoritarians understand that they need an aesthetic. They need art. They need an image to portray. And part of the image here is cool, aggressive, masculine, definitely masculine. And it appeals to this is the populist, and it appeals to young men. It has a certain counterculture, kind of subversive, and of course it's so easy to make fun of woke and the intersectionality and all of that. And as I've said over and over and over and over again, woke and intersectionality and all that cannot win. And then it's just a question of who replaces them. And in Europe, as in the United States, it does seem like the most passionate ones who are going to replace them are indeed the kind of fascist leaning right, and they'll only become worse. They'll only become worse. By the way, yeah, I mean these conservatives. It's a very Ayaan Ali makes the point that it's a very anti-Woodstock aesthetic in terms of sex appeal, right? They're not hippies. They're not hippies of the right. They're very well dressed, formal. Let's go back to the Nazis. That's the way they were. Anyway, this is a move to watch. They were also very good, by the way, very, very good at with TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. They have massive following on all these social media platforms. Everybody talks about how woke TikTok is. Well, in Europe, the AfD reached more young people through TikTok than all the other political parties combined. That is, the right in Europe has learned how to use TikTok and how to use Instagram and other platforms. I think the right in America has learned that as well. It probably, the right in America probably is focused primarily on X, on Twitter, but social media being cool, memes, all of that. It's if you look at the 28-year-old leader of the National Rally Party, that is Marine Le Pen's party, he's 28. Which is huge. He's got 1.8 million people follow him on Instagram, 615,000 on TikTok. And in France, the far right has some appeal among female voters, partially, I think, because Marine Le Pen, and partially because this young, I guess, handsome Jordan Bardella, who is the leader of the political party, who might be the next prime minister of France, which will be really super interesting. So a lot of things driving people to vote, but suddenly a lot of this has to do with policy. Unfortunately, Ayaan Ali buys into the stories that the far right tells you about immigration taking jobs, immigrants driving wages down, all fallacies that have been refuted over and over and over and over and over again by economists, but it doesn't prevent people on the right from repeating them over and over and over again, because they've learned from the left that when you repeat lies over and over again, they start sticking, and they become people just assume that they're true. They're sick of inflation. They're sick of increased housing prices, which again are blamed on immigrants, and again for no good reason. And they are sick of just a bad economy. And this is particularly true in Germany, where the economy is at best stagnating. It shrunk. Germany's been in a recession. German economy is doing a lot worse than American economy, and there's going to be major shifts in industry. A lot of German manufacturing is built around the auto industry, around the internal combustion engine, and yet European rules are going to destroy the capacity to build internal combustion engines. Is Germany really ready for transition to electric cars? Can it compete with China on electric cars? Doesn't look like it. Anyway, a lot of angst, particularly in Germany, but really throughout Europe, in terms of environmentalist policies, climate change, and the consequence that electrification, of course, the increased prices of energy as a consequence of shutting down the nuclear power plants. It's interesting, the Macron. I mean, as much as you gotta not like Macron is so good as compared to these other alternatives. I mean, here's a guy who increased the retirement age. He should privatize the system, but he was at least realistic enough to know that a 60 retirement age for a national pension would bankrupt France. He loosened employment regulations, which is a good thing, and maybe the most important thing that Macron has done is he has doubled down on nuclear energy. Doubled down. France will build over a dozen new nuclear power plants. That is a major achievement, is a major move, and puts to shame the Germans and many other Europeans. There will be a net export of electricity to the rest of Europe, and this is a major move by Macron, and it is going to be sad if some of these achievements, significant achievements, are undermined by the shift to the right. A shift to the statist right, because populist statist right, because that's what it is. I mean, these political parties are not free market political parties. These political parties are not about reducing regulations and unleashing laissez-faire capitalism. Quite the opposite. These are political parties that are very much dedicated to the idea of industrial planning, just instead of from a leftist perspective, from a right perspective, but there's no real difference. It's the same industrial planning, no matter who does it. All right, let's see where we are. David asks a question related, so I'll take it. Thank you, David. Almost $100. Really appreciate that. Hey, Ron, in bed recovering from knee surgery. Sorry to hear that. I hope it goes well. I hope it recovers and you have a speedy recovery and you get back on your feet quickly. At least I'll get to watch and participate in your live shows. Question: are you concerned that France will reject Macron's play? I assume you mean party. Yes, I am concerned. I think the polls show that Macron has there's a chance that Macron's political party will come in third, which means that the far right will come in first, the far left will come in second, and Macron will come in third. The calling for an early election, I don't understand what Macron was thinking. I don't understand who gave him this advice. I just don't get it, and it's scary and really, really bad, because again, the two main political parties that are likely to come out of this are going to be the far right. Marine Le Pen might be the one forming a government. I'm not sure who they form a coalition with. That is going to be interesting in and of itself. And then the far left, which are basically communists and or almost communists. So it is a bad circumstances. It is a bad combination. Players in wager. I mean, I don't see. I mean, they won't reject his wager. They'll make the wager not pay off. They'll make him lose the wager, and he's going to lose the wager. I haven't seen a single poll that shows Macron benefiting from this. I don't understand it. And it was kind of obvious. He did this at the peak popularity of the far right. So we'll see. I mean, we'll know a lot more in 5 days, probably 6, because the election was, there are 2 rounds. The first round will determine the top 2 candidates in each district, and then they run against each other a week later, I think on the 7th of July. By that point, we'll know the results of the British election, another one that is going to be incredibly interesting to watch, and where you could see a real shift. The UK is the only country in Europe and maybe anywhere that is shifting leftwards, not because the people are suddenly left-wing, but because the Conservative Party is so bad, so pathetic, so incompetent, so disappointing that the British people will vote them out of power and probably vote in the Labour Party. The only suspense in the British election is how big of a margin and what will happen to Farage's Reform Party. Will the Reform Party do better than the Conservatives? And will they be the second largest party in Parliament? That would be a real revolution in British politics. which has been dominated by these two parties for a long, long time. So we will see. It's going to be really, really interesting. It is the case that just to give a pitch for the Conservative Party, not because I like them, I don't, but the one Conservative Party leader that I have liked, I don't know enough about her, so I can't drill and give you a lot of concretes, but this is the only prime minister in the world that I've actually met. I've met Milei, I've met a president, but I've never met a prime minister. This is the only prime minister I've ever met. And that would be if she ever becomes prime minister, or she won't, she'll become, she might become the leader of the opposition. Leader of the opposition. It's not Daniel Hannan. If it was Daniel Hannan, I'd say vote for Conservative 100%. Daniel Hannan is amazing. And I don't know if he's even running in this election. It would be great if he was, but I don't know if he is. But it's Kemi Badenoch. I know she's disappointed in her participation in Sunak's government. But I met Kemi. We did a panel together where the two of us, a debate actually, where the two of us defended capitalism against a couple of socialists. This was a few years ago, before COVID, I think, at a festival in Wales. And she was great. And we got along. And recently I messaged her through a tweet, and she responded positively. So we have some communication. It would be cool if she became the leader of the opposition. So if I were living in Britain right now, I would probably vote Conservative and hope that Kemi is the one who ultimately rises to lead the party. Maybe she has to spend a few years in the opposition, but maybe ultimately she gets to take part as a prime minister. I saw a show for the Telegraph video show where they compared her favorably to Margaret Thatcher in her kind of, she's not they say she's not the most pleasant, nice person. She's tough, but she's also quite principled. And, when asked what her favorite books are, she said, what was the first book? Thomas Sowell and Hayek. Those are the things she liked. Now, I know she backed down in this government as a government minister, so she didn't live up to expectations. So, which is a challenge. But hopefully she is better than that. All right, David, I think I answered that. Yep. All right, let's do some good news. Let me a few positive news items. As usual, from the tech and biotech world. Hannan is in the House of Lords, yes, but I want Hannan to be like in the government. I want him to have influence. House of Lords strikes me as not very influential. So Hannan should be. I mean, I'd love to see him as prime minister. I mean, he would have turned the UK into free trade island. Free trade island. I mean, he is a real believer, a real advocate for free trade. Adam Smith-like, as compared to most people on the right, he is the real thing. So I'm a big Daniel Hannan fan. And he's got a great accent, and he has, as Jennifer points out, and he's super smart, and he's a great speaker. He always starts his speeches with a story, and he captivates the audience. He's just a good speaker. If you have to just give him points on public speaking. All right, let me remind you that we do have targets on this show, and it's important that we achieve those targets. And so I encourage you to use the sticker feature or the super chat feature to support today's show. If we go for 3 hours, then the target is $750, but it's basically $250 an hour, so about $100 short for the first hour. So I encourage you to help us reach our goals so we can keep these programs flowing. We can keep doing them. I expect to do a show. E. Jones just helped a lot. He says, "Hi, Yaron. Love getting your unique take on the news. Keep it up. That's $50. So that helped us, and now we're only $50 short for this hour. So if somebody wants to help us out over the next 10 minutes, you can do $1, $2, $5. There's another 50 from Wes. Thank you, Wes. So we're now over. We've reached our target for the first hour. Still 2 more hours to go. If we make it that long, we will see. All right, let's see. A few positive stories. This one out of all places, California. I know. Don't kill me. Just calm down. And thank you, Kenny, for the sticker as well. Kenny did a $2 sticker. He took me up on that one. You remember Waymo? Waymo is running in San Francisco basically robo-taxis, driverless taxis. I mean, really driverless taxis, not somebody sitting on the seat, but really nobody inside the taxi. You walk in. It now can maneuver some of those tricky San Francisco streets, which is not easy. They have proven to be unbelievably safe, proven to be unbelievably effective, and they have just received a green light from California regulators, I guess, to extend the service to wider swaths of San Francisco. They were only allowed to operate in a small section of San Francisco. Now they're expanding, as well as now, for those of you in Los Angeles, as well as now Los Angeles. So parts of Los Angeles. So you will soon be able to, if you're in LA, order a driverless taxi from Waymo, Waymo. I assume you download an app and you order it like you would a Uber or a taxi. This is super cool. I mean, this is the future. The future is not Uber in a sense of having a driver that takes you around. The future is not you buying a Ferrari. The future is driverless cars. And I think it's super cool, super amazing. You know, we talked about, I mentioned this, that we're building this facility in Austin, Texas. We're going to build an Ayn Rand Center in Austin, Texas. And one of the questions was, how big of a parking garage do we need? Do we need a big, dig deep and do multiple level parking garage? Because we're going to have events there and stuff like that. And my view is if you're really building this for the long run, then don't think of it as parking, because in the long run, nobody will park, right? Everybody's going to come there with their driverless car. The car is going to go away, and it might be their driverless car or it might be a driverless taxi, but either way, the car will not have to park on location. And I think that is the future. And I'm super excited. I'm super excited about this. I'm eager to go to San Francisco. Next time I'm in San Francisco, maybe in November, I'll be there to try it out. I don't know if it serves the airport. My guess is it doesn't, but maybe by then it will, and that would be pretty cool. And I think parking is a problem of the past. I think we're now mostly. I think what will happen is we'll have a car for fun. We'll have the Ferrari, right? And then but for day-to-day stuff, we'll just on our app order a car, come pick us up and take us, and that'll be the focus of how we move around. These driverless cars are impressive. They do the navigation. We know that from so part of this is a reliance on real high quality GPS, but they have it. They do well in intersections, both intersections with traffic lights and stop signs and other intersections. They are good at observing. Observing is not the right word. We have to have a whole new vocabulary for robots and cars and AI, of observing emergency vehicles and doing around them. And cyclists, I mean, that's the biggest issue. Cyclists, God, I'm always afraid when I drive in these cities that I'm going to kill somebody on a bicycle. They're very good with cyclists and scooters and all of that. So pretty amazing stuff. Exciting, and of all the places in the world, it is the two places that are most permissive with regard to experimentation regarding driverless cars. The two places are California and China. So but they don't sense. Rob says sensing, but it's not a sense. They don't have sense perception, right? So sensing is even worse. Right? So, yeah, I mean, anyway, I'm excited by this. I think this is, by the way, fatalities, car accidents are going to plummet, going to go way down. Way down. Of course, you will deny it if it happens under a Democratic president, but if it's a Republican administration, fatalities are going to go way, way down. In a Democratic administration, fatalities will go way, way down, and Scott will say, but you know, people are riding, I don't know what they'll say, riding their bicycles without a helmet and they're getting concussions. What about the subway? So that is self-driving cars. Let's see, what else do we have? Yes, Gilead Science, biotech company, has an experimental injection, antiviral injection, that is administered twice a year to prevent, you know, HIV cases. And it's a shot that you get, and it prevents people from getting HIV. And this is, of course, HIV is still a real problem, particularly in Africa, but you know, also all over the world. Anyway, they've just run their big first successful trial. They did this on women and adolescent girls in Africa, and they found that two shots of this prevented these girls or adolescents from getting HIV. Now, this is a huge deal. Now, drugs that prevent HIV from developing already exist, but they're difficult to administer, and it's either a daily pill or an injection every 2 months. The nice thing about this is it's once every 6 months, and you see, and the success rate in this trial that they did, this last trial, the success rate is 100%. That is, nobody got HIV on this treatment. So this is huge. Many companies have tried to develop a vaccine against HIV and have failed. The vaccines have not worked, but this is not quite as good as vaccine, but it is amazing, particularly if it has 100% success rate. So I've been telling you for a long time, I've been telling you now for a number of years, I am super excited about biotech. I'm super excited. These are, I think these are people who already have the AIDS virus, but haven't seen it develop into HIV, into the actual disease. So these are people who test positive on HIV. So it's not, all right, go have unprotected sex and let's see if you catch it. These are people who already have caught it, who already have it. And yes, this is a way, of course, and Neocon says, but Candace said biotech is bad. Yeah, I mean, Candace would say that. Of course, she would hate this because this just encourages people to have unprotected, I guess she's for unprotected sex, but only in marriage, right? So, so this would encourage people to have sex and not worry about getting AIDS, which ultimately leads to HIV. So it'll be interesting what the next step is. Right now, they're conducting a second prevention trial in men. In gay men, I guess, and so it'll be interesting to see how this works and whether they have as well 100% success rate. But it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. All right, so I got it wrong. Okay, HIV is the virus which then can develop into full-blown AIDS. So they did. So this is to prevent them from getting it to begin with. Okay, so it's HIV, then AIDS. So this is to prevent them from getting HIV. So this is instead of a vaccine. So they had 5,300 women and female adolescent ages 16 to 25 in South Africa and Uganda, some of whom received Gilead's and others who received older once daily drugs from Gilead. No cases of HIV occurred among women in the trial who received the twice yearly shot, which is significantly lower than the background rate of infection in these populations. The shot was also superior to Truvada. So the assumption is that having sex, they could get it. There's a control group, and that is all other 16 to 25-year-old women, and that's the control, and they literally got zero infection rates. So no, as they note, no other HIV prevention strategy has had zero infections before. All right. Anyway, more amazing progress on the biotech front. Here's another piece of this, right? An AI model has managed to help researchers identify Parkinson's disease in 79% of individuals up to 7 years before onset of the disease. In other words, it can identify the disease 7 years before they get any symptoms. So it would not surprise me if basically all of us start being screened on a regular basis, on an annual basis maybe, by our doctors for Parkinson's. Start, if you are going to get it, start treatment early. And of course, like a lot of other diseases, the earlier you start it, the better the outcome are probably going to be. Significantly better, the outcomes are going to be. This AI, here's, I'm reading for the paper. Here we validate a targeted multiplex mass spectrometry assay for blood samples from recently diagnosed motor Parkinson's patients with isolated REM sleep behavior disorder, and healthy controls. A machine learning model accurately identifies all Parkinson patients and classifies 79% of the pre-motor individuals up to 7 years before motor onset. Motor is the symptom, right, where you start losing ability. Treatment can start sooner. There are also now, I've read a number of stories recently where they are discovering treatments for Parkinson that, if administered early, will actually cure the disease or prevent you from ever getting it. So this is huge. This is huge, and this is the real revolution that's going to happen in the background. I mean, chat boxes are cute, they're nice, and they're going to have an important, I think, effect, right? Chat boxes, particularly the Yaron AI, they're going to have potentially world-changing effects. But AI in biotech is, we're just starting to see the impact. The ability of AI to analyze, massive quantities of data. The ability of AI to look at just what looks like a random, just assortment of data and to sort it out and to see patterns. Is just stunning. It's just stunning. So to the extent that can be used for disease detection, we already have AI that can see certain tumors in MRIs and in other radiology before a radiologist can, particularly if they work with a radiologist. We're just going to get I think exponentially, not incrementally, exponentially better at seeing patterns and identifying diseases, and identifying diseases very, very, very early. There are now these blood tests that identify 50 markers of cancer. That is going to get much, much better with the use of AI. So super exciting stuff. particularly for those of you who are young. And those of you who are young, yeah, I mean, 10, 20, 30 years from now, medicine could be completely different, and our knowledge and understanding of disease and our ability to identify it early and treat it, could be dramatically better than now. And I think that would be a big factor in not just extending human life, but dramatically improving the quality of the human life, right? The quality, particularly of those final decades of human life, which I am entering. So for me, the sooner the better. Okay, one final bio story. I don't know, I hope this stuff inspires you and motivates you. But one final bio story. This is about Ozempic. This is the drug that so many people are taking to reduce their weight. This is a drug that was originally developed as a drug to control diabetes. It's a diabetic drug that over the last few years it's been discovered that it affects a section of the brain that controls appetite, and that it dramatically reduces people's appetite, and that people on this drug lose weight in kind of a miraculous way. Most people, it doesn't impact everybody the same. It turns out it's a whole class of drugs. There's also Wegovy, Manjaro, and Zepbound, and it looks like others are going to be developed. Anyway, so already this is an amazing drug, and it's a revolution. And the company that makes Ozempic, I've talked about the fact that it is bigger, basically, they have a market cap bigger than the Danish economy where they are. So this company is just changing Denmark quite a bit. But anyway, it turns out that this is a drug that is now really, really interesting researchers. Researchers are, and this is oh, God forbid, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me for this, but this is a New York Times article. Researchers are running dozens of trials to see if this drug can also help Alzheimer's, liver disease, polycystic ovary syndrome, and even different skin conditions. The argument is that if these trials are successful, even if just some of these trials are successful, then we're talking about extending human life significantly. We're talking about increasing quality of life significantly, and reducing the cost of medicine significantly, taking out kind of the most expensive things that people have to deal with them. Nobody really understands how this drug works exactly, what it exactly does, but that's not new. We still don't quite understand the mechanism by which aspirin works, and aspirin has been used for, I think, 100 years or so, and there's very little understanding on how it works. There is now significant evidence that that Ozempic or Wegovy actually reduce the risk of heart disease, of heart problems. The FDA has even approved that doctors use it to treat heart disease. Last month, a trial showed that Ozempic reduces the risk of complications from chronic kidney disease. And two trials last week found that another one of these, a compound in two of these drugs, could improve symptoms of sleep apnea. That would be huge if you don't have to wear that mask. Anyway, it's like, it's presented as this could be a miracle drug. Now, this is not the first time a drug has been hyped like this. There's still a lot of work to be done, a lot of studies, a lot of research, increased understanding of the mechanisms. The more we know about these mechanisms, the better. At this point, we don't really understand it. But the more we understand it, the more we'll be able to use it for different applications. It could be, one of the hypotheses around this is that this is a drug that fights inflammation. Inflammation is associated with many of the diseases that kill us, and Ozempic seems like it lowers overall inflammation around the body. Yeah, miracle drug is sloppy use of language. No, it's not. Everybody understands what it means. If it can reduce inflammation, this has an impact on a lot of other things. Now, it does come with side effects. You lose weight, you lose your appetite, but it can also come with nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and constipation. But not everybody. Not everybody suffer from these, and of course, it can cause you to not want to eat and be malnourished in the end. But the more people understand it, the more they understand the mechanisms, the more they isolate the different compounds in it, the impact it has on different parts of the body. There's only upside here. There's only upside here. Right? Now, will it be effective or not? We don't know. We'll have to wait for the research. But again, I think super exciting and super interesting, and something more stuff to look forward to. In terms of the future. All right. Okay, let's see. I'll take a short break by doing super chats, and then, because there are not a lot of them, and then we'll go and we'll talk about Julian Assange and Snowden. And what is Snowden's first name? There's some reason Edward Snowden. So we'll cover that, and then there might be super chat questions post that you have. So definitely feel free to ask them. All right. Just a reminder again, you can use a sticker like Kim did. Thank you, Kim, or Henrik. Thank you, Henrik, and Charlie and Kenny, and of course Wes, who I've already thanked, and E. Jones. Thank you guys. You can do it for $4 all the way up to $500. $50 chunks are good, but I'll take whatever is required. It would be great if we had a memory pill, wouldn't it? The memory of names and concepts and words. That's what I need. Events I don't care that much about, but actual language, memory of language would be very helpful for this guy. So that would be nice. Thank you, Ben. Really appreciate it. But of course, you can also ask questions, because I do Super Chat. I answer all the questions in Super Chat. I take omega-3. That's not it. That's not it. All right, let's see. Andrew says, the right's aesthetic is strength on the surface, hollow within, reflects a dearth of intellectual substance. They stopped standing for a shining city on a hill. Now they laud barren land, walls, and barbed wire. Yes. And there's a strong nihilistic trend there, and but there's definitely a fascist element as well, a fascist element within the right, and I think that's right. But the reality is that even though it's shallow and empty, you cannot really run a successful, I think, cultural change without an aesthetic, even if we view it as ugly and superficial and shallow. And again, the Catholic Church understood this. It actually produced masterpieces of world art in music, in painting, in sculpture. They commissioned those works of art. But the communists understood this. There was definitely an aesthetic to communism called social realism. The Nazis understood it. The fascists more broadly understood it. Their uniforms, design, their architecture, and their painting and sculpture all reflect a particular view of the world. Again, if art is a concretization of these abstract ideas, if art is a way to concretize very abstract principles, then, you can use it, particularly in its what we call it, shallow, not so interesting form, but you can use it to manipulate people who are open to being manipulated. Again, the Soviets had a strong aesthetic, ugly as hell, but a strong one, as did the fascists, also ugly as hell, but strong aesthetic sense. All right, Neocon. Even after Assange's release, figures like Candace and Tucker continue spreading conspiracies claiming the West is as oppressive as China and Russia. They're not going to stop. This isn't going to change anything. They have a goal, and the goal ultimately is the destruction of the West. They are anti-Western civilization. They are, at the end of the day, sympathetic to Russia in particular. China's a little foreign to them because they look differently and they have a different culture. But Russia is very much the white and the Christian, and they're right in tune. So no, I mean, people like Candace and Tucker are representative of a new right that is authoritarian and is promoting conspiracy theories, not because they believe in the conspiracy theories, but because they understand the impact these conspiracy theories can have on people, and how they can sway people to their cause by spreading these conspiracies. So not surprising. James says, the Orthodox should read their scripture. Listen to me, all you men of Israel. Don't be afraid as you go out to fight today. Oh, this is in the Old Testament. That's right. I don't know who these, the ultra-Orthodox. Yeah, but the ultra-Orthodox, to fight for what? Many of them don't believe in the righteousness of the existence of the State of Israel. And they did believe in a division of labor. Their job is to pray. It's up to other people to fight. I haven't dug deep into their rationalization of why they shouldn't fight. But it's primarily that the Messiah hasn't come. And therefore the State of Israel, and the State of Israel is a secular state, in spite of what people believe. It's a secular state. They know it. And they're not willing to fight and risk their lives for a secular state, and they're not willing to fight and risk their lives for God, what was I thinking? For a state that is not justified, if you will, by the Messiah coming back. According to Scripture, the State of Israel should only be founded once the Messiah comes back. There are actually, among the ultra-Orthodox, there are some, not a majority, but there are some, who are a whole sect, who are violently anti-Israel. These are people who support Hamas, support Iran. They were present in the ceremony, the mourning of the Iranian president who died. They hate Israel with a vengeance. They're called Neturei Karta. And for them, Israel is an abomination because the Messiah hasn't come, and therefore there should be no Israel. They're mystics. Well, it is what it is. All right, what can be done, Eric asked? What can be done with clear two-tier system of justice? Clear criminals on the left are consistently not charged, while right-wing people have a book thrown at them for the smallest infraction thoughts. I don't see that happening. I mean, I don't know that happens. I'm not sure where it happens. Most crime, really, almost all crime, is prosecuted at the local level, at the state level, not at the federal level. So, in red cities, it is, or red towns, or red districts, or red counties, it is district attorneys who are likely to be red that are involved in the justice system. In blue cities like New York and San Francisco, it's more likely to be Democrats. But even then, a lot of times, like in Portland, Oregon, recently, a Democrat was elected district attorney who is quite tough on crime. So I just don't see this discrimination actually happening. I don't see where right-wing people are going to jail and left-wing people are not. I think that it's. I think that what you see is a lot of. How do I say it? What you see is what the news wants to show you, and right-wing news will show you every time a right-winger is prosecuted when supposedly they shouldn't be, or prosecuted for political reasons, and the left will show you the opposite. So all you see is your particular biased perspective on this. But on average, I don't think there's much proof that people on the right are more prosecuted for criminally than people on the left. I just don't know that happens. Now, there's you know, who is responsible for crime and where is most of the crime happening? I mean, the reality is most of the crime is not happening on the coasts, you know, people are prosecuted, particularly for violent crime. I don't think violent crime has anything to do with left or right. But I'm not sure who you're referring to. I mean, maybe you're referring to Trump. I don't know who you're referring to, Eric, in terms of people being prosecuted because of their political affiliation versus others not being. Like Biden's son is being prosecuted. I mean, that case would have never come to court, never come to trial if he wasn't Biden's son. I don't know what the ruling will be. I mean, he's found guilty, but I don't know what the penalty will be. I don't think that would have ever come to court. I don't think Trump's case would have ever come to court if he was not Trump. So there's politics, but it goes both ways, right? I mean, Hunter had a gun on him. Most Republicans would say you have a right to have a gun on you. It shouldn't be against the law. So, I mean, it's all you know, it's all one big diversion. The reality is that while politics plays a role, and both the left and right want to manipulate it, I don't think it's as clear cut that, you know, people on the right go to jail and people on the left do not. I just don't think that's real. That's real. I don't think there is data on that. I don't think it's statistically holds up. I think it's and of course, whenever it relates to something that to your side, then there's a conspiracy theory behind it. It's all conspiracies. It's all being whitewashed. It's I mean, yeah. All right. So yeah, I don't quite buy that. Maybe it's true. I'm not saying it isn't. Could be. You could correlate with the number of district attorneys that are left or right. I mean, but somebody has to actually prove it. I don't know. I think the politics of pull widely enforce, and they are widely enforced on both sides of the aisle. Both sides of the aisle. I've talked about the money stuff that affects the Trump kids just as much as it affects Hunter Biden. I guess it's not his kid. I guess it's his son-in-law. Apollo Zeus, what is your latest knowledge on longevity and the science? Wow, I mean, that's a big question. I don't have any new knowledge necessarily. I mean, the science keeps advancing. There keeps being new news. But I'm not in a great position to be able to assess what is and what isn't, what's good and what's not. I'm still a fan of Peter Attia. I think generally, if you eat kind of real food with a balanced diet, you know, enough protein to grow muscle and fats and carbs for other things, and if you exercise a lot, I think for the most part, and you eat real foods, you avoid like super processed foods. I think you're probably going to be fine now. Oh, and then you know, the other big thing that Attia is big on is really lower ApoB, really lower the bad cholesterol in ApoB. And even if you need to use drugs, lower them. Use statins, use whatever drugs are available to lower your heart disease markers. Yeah, I'm good with that. I'm good with that. I mean, Attia eats these meat sticks, but they have no fat. I ate one, somebody gave me one at Ocon, and they have zero fat. They're almost all protein. They taste okay. They don't taste great. They have no sugar. And yeah, I mean, they sound like a great snack because they have no fat in them. Usually, when you consume protein, you're almost always consuming it with fat, and these sticks only have protein or fat. I went and tried to buy some because I figured this will be a great snack. This is good. And you can't get them. They're sold out because Peter Attia has endorsed it, and therefore it's completely sold out. You can't get them. So I'm on a mailing list for them to let me know, you know, when they become available again. God, I'm not going to get into the cholesterol debates. I think a good aggregate for the whole heart disease issue is ApoB. ApoB is a particular marker on a blood test. And Atiyah, who at this point I trust, I mean, I'm open to evidence that he's wrong, but Atiyah is a big advocate of getting that number as low as you possibly can. One of the ways of getting that number low is by using statins. I'm not giving anybody advice, but I would again, I would recommend reading Peter Atiyah's book, following his blog, and then figuring it out for yourself. Yeah, God, you guys on the chat are gonna get into a whole discussion of cholesterol. Spare us, particularly since none of you, as far as I can tell, are doctors. I don't remember what the name of the meat stick is. It's a venison. It's a venison, what do you call meat that is dried and you eat it? There's a word for this, a concept for this, which again is escaping my mind, and jerky. So it's a venison jerky. It's not built-in, it's a venison jerky, and with zero fat. So looks good for me. All right. I get lots of fat elsewhere, so I don't need another source of fat. I actually consume a lot of fat. There we go. Chase has it down. Chase is the man. It's the Maui Nui stick, MAUI-NUI stick, and just search Maui Nui, and you will find it. They also sell actual venison ribs, steaks, really high quality. Venison, which is high in protein, low in fat, and you can cook it yourself. I don't cook it, so I don't cook, so I'm just getting the jerky. David says, Dr. Mike on YouTube has really excellent advice for training and nutrition, and much less complicated than Atiyah. All right. What do we want to do? We're talking about Assange, and let's do Assange and Snowden. Assange and Snowden. Let me move. No, what are you doing? I need to move this. Oh, I need to shrink this. One second. I've got this third monitor that is just under my camera, which is nice because then I don't look away when I'm reading from it. But I have to size it right. All right. That's fine. All right, so you might not have heard, but it's everywhere in the news. Julian Assange, who has been in British jail for, I think, now 5 years, for quite a while, was released yesterday. He got, I guess, on a private jet, flew to Thailand, and from Thailand is flying to a United States Commonwealth, one of these islands like Puerto Rico that the United States has jurisdiction over. And there he will plead guilty to one charge of the some national security violation, secrets violation, or whatever, and he will be tried for basically he would be sentenced, not tried, he will be sentenced for the same number of months that he has already spent in British jail, released, and he will probably go back to his home, his original home, which is in Australia. This has been a 14-year kind of what would you call it? Challenge for Julian Assange, who has been trying to evade trying to not come to the United States over this period. To be tried on security violations, not security violations, disclosing secrets, state secrets in the United States. So he has been avoiding that. He's been fighting extradition. The United States asked that the British extradite him to the U.S. Okay, so let's do a little bit of history of Julian Assange, and I'll give you my evaluation of him. And then we can compare that to Snowden, who is the other very famous whistleblower, if you will, or revealer of real secrets. So we'll start. I mean, he was born, I think, in 1971 in Australia. When he was growing up, he became a very accomplished hacker. Was considered maybe by 1991, when he was 20 years old, maybe Australia's most accomplished hacker. He's obviously quite brilliant, and he has claimed, although there's no evidence of this, he claimed that he actually hacked the operations of the U.S., including NASA and Milnet. So top secret security channels of the United States back in those days. Again, there's no evidence. If there was, I think he would have been tried back then, but there's no evidence he actually did that. In 1994, he was charged in Australia with 31 counts of crimes related to hacking. He eventually struck a plea deal. There seems to be a pattern here. Struck a plea deal. He pleaded guilty and was given a fine of 2,100 Australian dollars. He later described the trial as a formative period and as an experience that led him to start WikiLeaks 10 years later. So in 2006, Assange published an essay describing WikiLeaks' strategy and purpose. WikiLeaks is the company he started. The group would use leaks to force organizations to reduce levels of abuse and dishonesty, as decided by Assange. And the idea was to reveal widespread corruption and falsehoods and secrets that government was keeping unjustly from its citizens. But, and I'll get to this in a minute, it was not limited to governments. Assange used his hacking skills and the WikiLeaks program to break into corporate databases, steal corporate information, corporate secrets, and publish them. Assange is not a believer in private property. He is not a believer in privacy. He has no respect for individuals, for private property, for privacy, or anything like that. In 2010, WikiLeaks made big headlines because it released a video that alleges a U.S. war crime in Baghdad in July of 2007. In 2010, they released also over 250,000 U.S. diplomatic cables, an incident that later became known as Cablegate. Allegedly, Assange was the one who helped to decipher the data. Now, I want to just cross-reference this. In 2009, an Army intelligence analyst, pretty junior person, but an analyst in U.S. Army intelligence, basically, Chelsea Manning, he later was trans, and you made a lot of headlines because of that, but Chelsea Manning basically downloaded a large batch of documents. Just documents, classified documents from a classified computer network, and basically uploaded them to WikiLeaks. The U.S. helicopter strike in Baghdad is one of the documents that were released, but it also included the 250,000 diplomatic cables from American embassies around the world, and hundreds of dossiers compiling intelligence allegations against Guantanamo detainees. In 2010, WikiLeaks starts publishing all this material. Now, it was clear that this material explicitly identified informants on the Taliban in Afghanistan. That releasing this was going to risk the lives of people who were working for the United States within the Taliban regime. And indeed, there is tons of evidence that many of the people whose names were disclosed by the WikiLeaks leak were later killed, went missing, disappeared, and that this had major impact on the lives of many individuals. Assange knew this. He was told in advance that by releasing this, their lives would be placed in danger. His actual response to that, at least documented by other journalists who were involved in this, was too bad for them. They are, in a sense, double agents. They are people who are working with the United States. They deserve whatever happens to them. Assange's motivation around much of this is his anti-Americanism. I'd broaden that to his anti-West. Assange hates America. He has a real nihilistic attitude. He wants to see America and the West put down. He'll release anything. Whether it puts people in danger, doesn't put people in danger. He doesn't care. He doesn't care, right? All he cares about is doing damage to America and its businesses. Again, releasing information from private corporations to embarrass them or to reveal their trade secrets or whatever. He doesn't care. None of that matters to him as long as he's doing damage to the so-called establishment, and the establishment he hates most is the American establishment. Assange, without any doubt, is a criminal, and again with a strong nihilistic and without any doubt an anti-American bent. And again, Scott will defend him because that is the pose of the new right. They love this guy because at the end of the day, he leaked some of the Clinton emails. He's the one who basically the Russians handed the emails to him and he leaked them. But he is a nihilist, and he fits right well with the nihilistic right. Today, he is. The left and the right, he's clearly a leftist, but the left and the right, there's very little to differentiate between the two. He is super positive and friendly with Putin and Russia. Nothing WikiLeaks ever published was an embarrassment to the Russians. There was clear attempt not to do that and not to release data that would embarrass the Russians. His whole goal was to embarrass the Americans. And one of the things that you will see with Tucker and Candace and Scott's here in the chat defense of Assange is that they fundamentally, are anti-American. And that the anti-Americanism is reflected in the fact that, America is lousy because over the last, 16 years, the left has dominated America. There have been 2 Democratic presidents, and therefore it's okay. It's okay to go after everybody. The very idea that somebody can download randomly 250,000 documents from a secure server, secure military server, and that it would be okay to publish this, and that is not clearly a violation of American law, and he shouldn't be tried for that. We're not talking about a whistleblower. We're not talking about somebody who's revealing, something in particular that's wrong and rights violating. We're basically talking about somebody who is disclosing American secrets for the sole purpose of disclosing American secrets. There was no filtering of this. There was no filtering of what would be harmful or what was not. Everything was published. People died as a consequence. And Assange is a bad guy, a monster. In a previous era, he would have been tried for treason and sent to jail for the rest of his life. This is not about corruption, and it's not about corruption. And even if it is about corruption, by what right does he hack into private computers? By what right does he disclose private information? Now, in 2010, with this release, after the release of this information, there are significant debates within the Justice Department about asking for his extradition to the United States to face trial. Manning was arrested and tried and sentenced to jail. ultimately pardoned because he was trans and not treated well in jail and all the ridiculous altruistic reasons by which somebody like that would be pardoned. But in the meantime, Sweden in 2010 issued an arrest warrant for Assange in connection with an sexual assault investigation. Now the rumor is, Scott will probably jump in here to assert this, that Sweden only did this because the United States kind of forced their hand. This was a way for the United States to get back at Assange without actually dealing with him. Assange fights this in the British court because he's in London, and he loses his appeal. That is, there's a warrant for his arrest in Sweden. He's violated bail. And the British are committed, because they're part of the EU at this point, to hand him over to the Swedish authorities. I mean, this guy is a piece of work. So what does he do? He goes to Ecuadorian embassy, who does not have an extradition agreement with Sweden, and he basically asks for political asylum. He claims he's politically persecuted by the United States, and the Swedish thing is just part of that persecution. He spent 7 years, holed up in Ecuador, right? Spent 7 years holed up in Ecuador, in the Ecuadorian embassy, not in Ecuador, in the embassy in London as in Ecuador. As I said, Manning was convicted after court-martial, sentenced to 35 years in prison. 35 years, the longest sentence in American history for a leak-related case. This was not a trivial case. This was not just some, unimportant documents. These are documents that actually put people's lives at risk. These are documents that actually killed people. So Manning got 35 in prison. He then declared himself a transgender, adopted the name of Chelsea, went through the whole ridiculous thing, and tried to commit suicide twice, and was pardoned by Obama. But, I mean, the real crook here, without any question, is Assange. In 2016, WikiLeaks published hacked emails from the Democratic server. It's not clear how they got them. It's still, it probably came from somebody hacking the server, which was not particularly secure. We know that Hillary was not particularly big on security. Anyway, by every measure and by every action that he took, Assange was a crook, right? Or not a crook, but a crook in a sense of treasonous. Was eager to do as much harm as he could for the United States of America. In 2018, the Justice Department, under Trump's Justice Department, obtained a grand jury indictment against Assange on the narrow charge of hacking of a hacking-related conspiracy and trying to help Manning. The indictment is still sealed, anyway, he was charged and proceedings against him are started. In 2019, Swedish prosecutors dropped their investigation into Mr. Assange, and Ecuador, he gets into a fight with Ecuador somehow, not sure exactly what happened. Ecuador revokes his asylum status and literally invites the British police to enter the embassy and arrest him for violating his bail. He's sentenced to 50 weeks in jail for that offense. The United States then formally charges him and starts the extradition process. He's not charged for publishing the hacked Democratic emails or even CIA documents from 2017. Again, he's hacked for the previous ones, right? And of course, all this ended. There have been people on the right and on the left, the same kind of people, the Tucker Carlson people, and on the left that have been eagerly encouraging the Biden administration to pardon him. Biden basically cut this deal with him, and the deal basically is to appease Biden's left. He, again, is going to plead for one count of violating the Espionage Act and be sentenced to 5 years in jail, which is the 5 years he's already spent in prison. Just a few other things that I found interesting that as I said, put hundreds of Afghans at risk for fighting against the Taliban. Named names. I mean, he should rot in hell forever just for doing that. He helped. He released a list of organizers, instigators of the opposition in Belarus, and provided them to the Russians and Belarusian dictator. Which again allowed him to round them up. So again, these are people. These are real consequences to people's lives. This guy's a monster, right? He literally handed over the names of organizers to a dictator, Lukashenko in Belarus, and you know what happens to these people? They disappear. Bad stuff happens. In 2012. He got a show on Russia Today. Russia Today. And on that show, you can go find I think there's YouTube there, right? On the show, I lost the reference. Yeah, on the show, he interviewed people like, not surprisingly, Noam Chomsky, who I think philosophically he's probably more of a Noam Chomsky guy than anything else. Including the head of the Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah. So again, this is a guy who's associated himself one way or another with bad people, with evil people. Let's see, what else? There was something about Saudi Arabia that was really interesting. He tried to ingratiate himself with Trump, but it is the Trump Justice Department that ultimately went after him. Yeah, in 2016, WikiLeaks dumped a cache of files on Saudi Arabia, right? They released these files of Saudi Arabia. Again, corruption, really? These files included Saudi men that had been arrested for being homosexuals. That's corruption somehow. Names of several Saudi citizens that had HIV, corruption. And, interestingly enough, think about the context of Saudi Arabia, the virginity status of many Saudi women. So my guess is that this was taken out of some medical thing. Again, you can do your research. But there are a number of stories about this data dump, Associated Press and others, disclosed this data dump of Saudi info on Saudis. And again, what does Saudi Arabia do with homosexuals? What does Saudi Arabia do with adulteresses? What does Saudi Arabia do with these people? So this is a guy who doesn't care about human life, doesn't care about privacy, doesn't care about property rights, individual rights, heavily involved in the Catalonia independence movement. But again, not because he believes in anything, but this is really just somebody who wants to create havoc in the West, wants to create havoc among Western countries. He is probably, he is a huge admirer of Putin and of the Belarusian, Lukashenko. He is a huge admirer of authoritarians and a bad guy. And, you can put aside his work with the Kremlin and you can say that's all a conspiracy, maybe, but all these other things, I don't think he's ever denied them. I think these are all factual. So my evaluation of Assange, bad guy with a nihilistic streak, a real hater of the West, particularly of America, of Western civilization more broadly. This is a guy that should have spent a lot more time in jail. Biden basically cutting a deal with him is basically Biden buying off his far left. And isn't it amazing that the people in the chat here who are associated with the right, with the new American right, like the far left, are supporters of Assange? That is, again, the far left and the far right are the same. There's no difference between them. No difference between them. And yet, people who claim to be objectivists, are supporting a far-right movement that has more, more in common with the far left than anything we stand for. It's pretty sad. It's pretty sad. But anyway, so my evaluation of Assange, this is not a whistleblower. This is not somebody out for corruption. This is out to just embarrass and destroy and humiliate and kill, lead to the killing of whomever, particularly if they're associated or some way associated with the West and with America. So what about Snowden? Now, I think Snowden is a very different character. I mean, Snowden, I think, was a hero for coming out and saying what he did. I've lost some respect for Snowden over the years because he keeps coming out with horrible statements and stupid statements. He has a very, very shallow understanding of free speech. He's on the wrong side of the Israeli-Palestinian Hamas. He's pro-Hamas. Snowden, politically, intellectually, philosophically, not a good guy, I'd say, over the last 5 years. But Snowden in 2013, right? Snowden in 2013 revealed information about NSA actually spying on Americans. NSA doing things that he believed were clear violations of individual rights, and I think rightly so. They were violations of individual rights. Snowden had a bunch of super secret files, which he insisted on redacting. All names, anything that could put agents at risk, anything that could put individuals at risk, he took out. This is exact opposite of Assange, who published everything, didn't care. To compare Assange to Snowden is, I think, a massive injustice. Assange doesn't care about rights, doesn't care about individual rights, doesn't care about American privacy, doesn't care about America. He hates America. And Assange led to the death of people. Snowden worked hard so that his revelations would not lead to that death. He really focused his disclosures on those things, not on stopping the U.S. from listening to terrorists overseas, not the U.S. stopping terrorism against America. His whole focus was on rights of Americans being violated. And I have every reason to believe that Snowden was right. And that a lot of these programs still continue. That is, that the NSA and other American security organizations are indeed violating the rights of Americans. And the fact that he brought it to the forefront, made a big deal out of it, one of the sad things over the last 10, 11 years is nobody cares, right? Not the Obama administration, not the Biden administration, not the Trump administration cared. Nobody's done anything about this. But the reality is that Snowden did something good. And in that sense, it's heroic. Assange did nothing good. Nothing good. Oh, revealing Hillary Clinton's emails, right? Because it's against the left, he's a hero. I'm curious if Edward or anybody out there, list the heroic things that Assange did. What was Assange fighting for? What is his positive agenda? He is a man of the left who hates America. He is a Noam Chomsky acolyte who loves Putin, loves authoritarianism, and is a leftist. You guys are supposed to be anti-leftists. And Biden did this to secure his left. Trump never did it. Biden did it. So God, I don't understand the minds of these new right nutcases. It really is. It's weird. Snowden, of course, fled to Hong Kong, where he released the information to Glenn Greenwald, Laura Poitras, and Barton Gellman, Edwin McCaskill, for a variety of different. This is from The Guardian and The Washington Post. One of the sad things is that he made Glenn Greenwald bigger, and I'm sure that a lot of the people in the chat are big fans of Glenn Greenwald. Glenn Greenwald is an anti-American, anti-capitalist, leftist, monstrous figure. Is a really horrible guy, not criminal, but just really horrible. And yet the new right loves him because he hates. He's come out against some of the woke left. This information was released by these entities. American intelligence agencies were after him. They knew he was in Hong Kong, so he escaped from Hong Kong and found refuge in Moscow. And initially I said, okay, Moscow, because Russia doesn't have an extradition treaty with the United States, he can be safe there. But since then, he really has. He's been given Russian citizenship by Putin, and he really has expressed views that are, quite disgusting and quite offensive, and which is unfortunate because I had a positive view of him, and I don't anymore. I still think what he did was good, as some of you know, because I've said this in the past. That a few months after he disclosed this material in either late 2013 or early 2014. I was with another dozen or so people invited to the NSA, where they tried to explain themselves and justify themselves and so on, which only convinced me even more that what Snowden had done was the right thing, and only convinced me more that the NSA indeed was in violation of the individual rights of Americans in even more ways than Snowden suggested. But it is quite sad. What happened to Snowden. It would have been great if Trump would have pardoned him and brought him back to the United States. A lot of us were advocating for that, or somebody would have pardoned him. I think the more time he spends in Russia, the worse he gets, and indeed, his support for Hamas is pretty shocking. It's pretty shocking. What's the principle here? I really don't think that Snowden was motivated by nihilistic motives. I think Snowden was motivated, at least in the beginning, by his love for America and by the love for certain principles in America. I don't know how much he understood the fourth principles, but for the principles of America. So Snowden, I think, was a good guy and was motivated by the right things. I think Assange, every indication is that he is motivated by hatred of America, hatred of the West, a Chomsky-like disgust with American foreign policy and America more generally, not a healthy critique of American foreign policy, but a Chomsky-like critique of foreign policy. I think he is a bad guy, and I wish he had been extradited to the United States, and it would be really, really cool if he sat in jail for a very long period of time. If Manning could get 35 years, Assange should have gotten more than the 5 years he's going to get in this plea deal. On the other hand, it takes it off the table. And it's good for Biden because Biden gets to tell the left within his party look what I did. I released Assange. They're very happy. If you're watching, if you're on X, you know that people are ecstatically happy about this outcome, and this is Biden has bought a lot of goodwill from his left by doing this. But what's interesting is that the right supports this as well. I mean, the far right, not the center, not the right of center, the far right, the populist right. Call it the populist right. I mean, look, there's a lot about Assange that we don't know. There's a lot about Assange that's very shady. I suspect that Assange was much more integrated into the Russian equivalent of the KGB than has been led on. But anytime you mention that, you're accused of conspiracy theories. So I don't, because I don't have any proof. I'm just suspecting it. I just suspect it. The reality of his publishing 250,000 pages, the reality of people's lives being harmed and damaged by that, people being executed for that. The fact that he published the Saudi documents, that's not questioned. The fact that he published secret documents from private American corporations and had no problem with that because, again, he's a Chomskyite, and as a Chomskyite, he does not believe really in any significant way in private property. It all makes him clear that he is a bad guy. He is a bad guy. We could quibble about the details. We can quibble about what was in any particular document. We could quibble about the Hillary Clinton emails, whether he got them from the Russians, they got them from Podesta, or he got them from somewhere else, or it was a direct hack, or who was manipulating whom. But the reality is that whatever at the fringes he is, this is an immoral, evil bastard. And I'm glad he sat in jail. I'm glad his last 14 years of his life have been destroyed. And I hope he lives a pathetic, miserable life for the rest of his life. That is, and I think Snowden is not living a happy life. And I think, his new ideas and his new vision, this is what happens when you go to Moscow and seek political asylum. As you know, I'm not a Christian, so I don't wish good things happen to bad guys. I don't wish good to my enemies or to the enemies of my ideas. All right. We've got some questions about Assange and others, so I will take those. But you can ask questions about anything. So feel free to jump in with questions about anything. We are entering our third hour. So how long we go today will be determined by how many questions you ask and how much money we raise, whether we cover the $250 for the final hour. We're $5 short of getting to the second hour $250, so maybe somebody could just do a $5 sticker. That would be cool, and just to get us there. But then we still have to raise $250 to get to our target. Microsoft Sam Harris says, I'll give you $255 right now if you delete the channel permanently. Is this supposed to be an insult? Is supposed to be, I'm not sure, so don't give me money, he says. PhD in finance, he puts in quotes, laughter, because the interest rate is so complex. Whatever, right? We got another little nihilist on the chat. We seem to attract them. They seem to come over to I don't know what the purpose of this one is and why he's got Sam Harris in his heading. Sam must not be happy with that, but so be it. My audience is bigger than it's ever been, right? It's bigger than 2017 by a long shot. And it's bigger than it's ever been. More people watch my videos now than they've ever watched my videos. So just an answer to one of his stupid comments. All right, David, another $50. Thank you, David. David says, Assange leaked state secrets to the Russians and is a traitor. I agree. Snowden reached out to the offended American public and is a real hero for exposing NSA spying on us. Absolutely, absolutely. That's a clear-cut, concise way of doing it. I think it's, as I said, he's a traitor, he's a nihilist, he's just a hater, Assange. And Snowden was basically motivated by the right things. By the right things. Shelley, I didn't know much about Assange, but I saw an interview of him with Bill Maher. The second he got pushback, Assange tried to intimidate him by divulging Maher's donations to the Democratic Party live on air. This is not a good man. No, I mean, this is an evil guy. This is a really evil guy who happens to be really, really smart and has used his high intelligence to actually go out there and hack and get private information about private individuals and violate their rights left and right. So he's where Snowden defended our privacy by disclosing the NSA's violation of it. Assange is a violator of all of our privacy. Mike Dial, are you aware that Snowden sold to China and Russia information about China and Russia with nothing to do with U.S. citizens? No, I was not aware that Snowden sold any information to China and Russia, so I didn't know he did that. So I'm curious what the sources are. That would be interesting to follow up and figure out exactly what that was. But I believe you when you say nothing to do with U.S. citizens, because yes, I think that Snowden does care about the U.S. What do you call it? Assange hates the U.S. So one was motivated by love, one was motivated by hatred. Again, I think Snowden has probably gone bad from years of isolation in Russia, but yeah, it is what it is. Mike also says, because most people don't know how internet transport protocols work, that they have an unrealistic expectations of privacy. I think that's true. I don't know how they work. And I have an expectation of privacy. I know I probably don't have the privacy. I know enough to know that I don't have it. And Mike continues, because they don't understand internet transport protocols, it is possible that people have an unreasonable expectation of privacy in the world. I think that's true. I also think that there's so much information now that's being leaked from all kinds of sources, in all kinds of ways, in all kinds of contexts, that suggests that we don't have privacy in the web. You also have to come to the conclusion that maybe people just don't care. That maybe people just don't care, and people are willing, don't care about privacy and are willing to have people know a bunch of stuff about them. Or maybe they don't think it through, given that we don't live in the most thoughtful world. Let's see, David Uvegas just did gifted five memberships to Shally, Bob Hill, Nate, Don Allen, and Sam C. All got memberships. So when we do the next member show, not sure what the date will be, but maybe I think in early July, I'll do a member show. You guys can all attend, and you can watch all the past member shows because you're now members, and you can watch all this. So take advantage of this. Go to the members part of the YouTube channel, and you can watch whatever of the member shows that have not been public. You can watch them over there. Some of them are fun. A lot of them have to do with aesthetics. And that is good. Okay, let's see if I missed any stickers. No, I think we're good. All right, Kenny says, I can only afford 25 pounds, but please keep your channel. All right, $250 to get rid of my channel, 25 pounds to keep it. I don't know. It's really a tough choice. It's really difficult to make up my mind. I'll have to think about it, Kenny. But thank you. God. All right. Eric says, Danny Penny charged. I don't know what that says. Columbia students clear destruction of property, no charges. Store owner defends himself, charged. Criminals assaulted people on subway, no charge. Happens in many democratic cities. Yeah, so I agree. In democratic cities, that's exactly what I said. That it depends on your district attorney. And that's not an issue of right wing or left wing. I don't know if the guy who attacked the store owner was right wing or left wing. And I don't think that's the issue. The issue is these district attorneys, these left-wing district attorneys are, have a ridiculous, a ridiculous view on crime. It's an evil view on crime, and they don't prosecute criminals. It's not an issue of red or blue. But it's not that they ask you, are you a Republican? Oh, you're Republican, I'm prosecuting you. Oh, you're Democrat, okay, I'll let you off free. I don't think that's what's going on. As I said, blue cities that have progressive, the mayor of New York, for example, is very anti these policies, but the progressive district attorney, he's the one who prosecutes people. And as we saw in Portland, the city rebelled against it and just elected a prosecutor who's going to be tough on crime. So people are not cool with this, and they are going to fire the bastards. Hopefully, Braggs will be fired in New York next time around. Neocon says Assange deserved the death penalty for what he did. I'm not big on the death penalty, but certainly a long stay in jail would have been good. Mike Dial, Snowden stole information about capabilities, but did he ever give us the name of a U.S. citizen whose rights were violated? No, he showed us the capabilities, but not just capabilities, the fact that these capabilities were being used, were actually being implemented. So, and I think that, it's good that he didn't give us individual names. I think that would have been dangerous and violation of privacy again. So the fact that he showed us this is what the NSA does, not just it's capable of, this is what it does, and therefore it's violating rights by doing that. Maribens, again, using my super chat to pass on encoded messages to her boyfriend. But I've guaranteed that I will read all super chats. So there you go. She's using it. Shout out to Philosophy at Work. Capitalism is like a flavorful beer with balanced hops and malt. But what about the poor? I guess if you take all these and you run them through an AI, maybe it will decode them and give us insight into what Maribens and Philosophy at Work are actually talking about. I'm not sure I want to know, though. Do you guys want to know? I don't know. Do you want to know? Violation of privacy, maybe? I don't know. No, they're making it public. There's no privacy involved here. All right, Ben says, hey, Yaron, I'm in love with Tchaikovsky. I discovered his 6th Symphony, Opus 74. I'm looking for another composer to get into. Do you have any suggestions? Oh, the 6th Symphony is amazing. His 4th, 5th symphonies are also amazing. Yeah, Tchaikovsky's fantastic. I love his trio, his chamber music, his concertos, his ballet music. I mean, can't go wrong with Tchaikovsky. He's amazing. Other composers, there's Brahms, his 4 symphonies, I particularly like his 1st and 4th. His 2 piano concertos are amazing. His violin concerto is amazing. You see the one with the concerto for violin and cello? I can't remember. Anyway, everything by Brahms. His trio, I just heard his trio at a concert. His trio is beautiful, a piano trio. So Brahms is a lot of compositions. A lot of compositions. So definitely Brahms. Rachmaninoff, probably the most similar to Tchaikovsky in terms of romanticism, in terms of emotional sweep. I'd say Rachmaninoff is the most similar, particularly his piano concertos and his 2nd Symphony. So I would say Brahms and Rachmaninoff. would be the most similar. You could also dive deep into Schumann, dive deep into Schumann and Schubert, and Mendelssohn, all romantic composers. Basically, everybody from the Romantic era you could use. So those would be the composers, where you can find dozens and dozens of works, lots and lots of works that will get you excited in, I think, a similar way to the way Tchaikovsky does. All right, guys, that was all the questions. So you can still ask about anything if you want. I will remind you the Ayn Rand Institute is a sponsor for the show. And, they are having a, 4th of July meetup. You can find information about it. 4th of July, I think the event itself is on the 2nd of July, so next week. You can sign up for that event by going to AynRand.org, start here, and you can sign up for the 4th of July kind of meetup and discussion and celebration, which should be, let's see, what did I do? No. Which I think will be a lot of fun and really interesting. I think the theme of it is really how Atlas Shrugged is the second Declaration of Independence in the United States. So it will be Nikos and Onkar. Nikos and Onkar will be hosting this special live stream. The focus will be on examining how Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged launched a moral revolution, without which the political revolution of the Founding Fathers would have had to remain incomplete. Atlas Shrugged completes the American Revolution. So encourage you to watch it. It's on Tuesday, July 2nd at 3 p.m. East Coast time. I guess it's during my show, so they'll be competing with me. So be it. But I hope you don't listen to it live, but that you watch it afterwards on the Ayn Rand Institute website. But please go and register at AynRand.org/start here. Of course, the other sponsor of the show is Alex Epstein. By the way, while I'm doing this, you can ask questions, and I will be happy to answer them. We've still got, if you want, 45 minutes. And about $200 to go to make our targets. Alex Epstein, yes, Alex Epstein. Alex Epstein will be, encourage you to follow him. Encourage you to follow Alex on alexepstein.substack.com. I also encourage you to follow his talking points, which you can get through the Substack. And of course, you can also have access, if you pay extra, for his premium Alex AI, where you can ask Alex through his AI any questions on energy, climate change, or fossil fuels, and you will get an Alex-like answer. Alex is the world expert on energy, climate change, environmentalism, and of course, fossil fuels. So please go to his website, engage with him. What else did I want to say? I want to say a couple of things. One is, I have made this offer. I don't know if it resonated. I'm interested in doing coaching, like life coaching, for anybody interested. I bring, obviously, a wealth of experience of being alive, of applying the objectivist philosophy to human life. Obviously, not just for politics, but primarily on living, kind of the Yaron rules for life, but also on business, which I've been involved in, and happy if you've got issues, if you've got questions, if you've got things you would like to discuss. Happy to see if there's a match in terms of coaching. So. I think I bring real value. You can email me at yaron@yaronbrookshow.com, yaron@yaronbrookshow.com, and we can schedule a time to discuss. All right, everybody. I will see you all tomorrow. And we will be on at 2 p.m. Again, it will be a 3-hour show, or at least 2 hour plus. Whether we get to 3 hours completely depends on you guys and how many questions you ask. We got a number of regulars who haven't been around for the last couple of shows. Not sure what's going on. Hopefully they come back. But I look forward to seeing all of you and all of our regulars on the show tomorrow, 2 p.m. By the way, 2 p.m. every day this week. So just so you know, we're back to the regular schedule. And this week we'll have a Ask Me Anything program on Saturday. And I'll also do a regular show on Sunday. Just because there was a few weeks there where we didn't do many shows, so I'm trying to catch up. All right, David has a question. Hi, Yaron. I'd definitely be interested in your life coaching. I also had a question. What are your thoughts on Pierre Poilievre? Pierre Poilievre, is this the conservative up in Canada? Is that the guy? I mean, I don't know a lot about him, but the little I've seen, super interesting. He seems relatively principled. He seems relatively tough. I find Canadian conservatives, at least when they speak, they don't do much when they get into power, but at least when they speak, they seem to be better than Americans, partially because they're not religious, so that at least they don't carry their religion as the standard, right? I think that American conservatives play the religious card over and over and over again because so many of their supporters are religious, so they have to do it. Canadians is basically a secular culture, so they don't have to talk about religion and abortion. So I don't know what their position is, but he strikes me as good, better than any conservative in America right now, and I would vote pretty much. I would definitely vote for him. And the Canadian Conservatives over Justin Trudeau. I mean, Justin Trudeau is worse than Biden, and the Canadian Conservatives are much, much better than Trump. So you get a much better combination. If you're interested in the life coaching, it is basically $1,000 an hour. You can email me at yaron@yaronbrookshow.com to do it. Mary Benz asks, coaching. Marriage, kids, starting a business, all of the above. I've been married a long time, so I have something to say about that. I've had kids. I have something to say about that, and I've started a few businesses. None of them, massive startup like Silicon Valley like successes, but they've done well. So yeah, I'm happy to chat, and hopefully I can add value to you guys. But yes, any of those issues and more, applying objectivism to your life, applying virtues to your life, how to live a virtuous life, $1,000 US. Sorry, $1,000 US for an hour is the fee. It's expensive, I know. But time is valuable. As I learned in finance, I think. Time is valuable. All right, guys. I will talk to you all tomorrow, as I said, 2 p.m. East Coast time for the rest of the week. And I will tell your friends, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what is breaking news. I promise that if there's a war in Lebanon, I will have a special show on that, maybe live as it's happening. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.